joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. Light is the beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from writer Leo Buscaglia. The fact that I can plant a seed and it becomes a flower, share a bit of knowledge and it becomes someone else's knowledge, or smile at someone and receive a smile in return, are to me a continual spiritual exercise.
And our opening hymn will be in the blue book, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear, number 1029. Stand and rise if you are able.
Meditation, and I invite you in this month of emergence and this month of longed for spring to picture a budding flower in your mind as we enter into this quiet space. Marvel that this creation, while utterly fragile, yet undaunted, boldly buds forth, turning resolutely toward the sun. We too shimmer with expectation, exuding our own illumination, color, pulse, and scent. Vulnerable, still we venture our lives courageously toward hope and light, at once fragile and rooted. Carolyn Owen Town. And now we will sing our meditation hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life. I think I'd like to read the opening words again, so we'll remember them as we head into my sermon. The fact that I can plant a seed and it becomes a flower, share a bit of knowledge and it becomes someone else's knowledge, or smile at someone and receive a smile in return, are to me a continual spiritual exercise. Leo Buscaglia describes a spiritual practice of generosity and hope. And today I want to share with you a story that inspires me. It's about people that I never knew personally, but who impacted my life deeply. It's a story of completely ordinary people doing rather ordinary things, like planting seeds, sharing knowledge, and smiling at strangers. I think that each of us has at least one time in our lives when the face and voice of another person before us reveals an aspect of the divine. I can only imagine that if we were really awake and really attentive, every single person and every single encounter would reveal itself that way. Here is one such fateful moment. Our story opens in the most prosaic of ways with a young man standing on a street. It was 1909, and Harry Edmonds was employed at the YMCA in New York City. He was neither wealthy, nor powerful, nor well-placed, nor perhaps a very noteworthy person. And on that day, in 1909, he happened to say a passing good morning to another man who was walking by. Well, the unknown man returned his greeting and continued to pass on by. And then the first extraordinary thing in the story happened. Instead of continuing along, the man stopped, turned, and walked right back up to Harry Edmonds. And he said to him, "I want to thank you for wishing me a good morning. I am a graduate student here in New York City. I have lived here for several weeks, and you are the first person who has spoken to me." Now, we know very little about this young man, a young Chinese man, as the story goes. Unfortunately, we do not have his name or any other information about him. Who was he? We don't know much, but we know that he was a wayfaring stranger in an alien land. We can imagine that he had a kind of social courage and a certain willingness to expose his vulnerability to another person. Maybe he was a little reckless. Who knows? We can picture him living and studying in New York, far from his loved ones or anything else that was remotely familiar to him. And we can realize what an act of audacity it was, really, for him to say what he said to Harry Edmonds. He risked being seen, not as successful and together. No, this man was willing to say, hey, I am lost in the crush of this huge, unfriendly, bustling city, and I need help. So let's never forget that without the action of this nameless student, we wouldn't even have a story. His was the first and the most important act of courage in the long chain of events that eventually created something new in the world. What does it take for us to reveal our vulnerability to another person? How bad do things have to get before we say to someone, I'm hurting and I don't know what to do? Why is it so difficult for us to drop our masks? Our masks of, everything's fine. I know what I'm doing. I've got this under control. Well, for one thing, we tend to think of our troubles, our hurting, our sadness as something that would burden other people. You know, the entertainer and actress Dinah Shore said, trouble is a part of life, and if you don't share it, you don't give people who love you a chance to love you enough. We can certainly extend that idea out to our congregations, and even outward toward the wider world. Do we really believe in a loving community? A loving universe? If we believe that we are loved and accepted, we are more likely to let down our guard and share our true hearts with one another. And you know, we often see it as our duty to listen to the complaints and the problems of our loved ones, to pour balm on their wounds. But what if the sharing of these wounds is actually a gift in and of itself? Because when a person, like the international student in New York City in 1909, makes a choice to reveal something deeply human to another person, it's difficult to just shake it off. Harry Edmonds couldn't shake it off. He began to think about this man who spoke to him on the street. He mulls over the encounter. He just can't let it go. And finally, he says to his wife, whose name was Florence, and who is actually just as much of a hero of this story as Harry. He says to Florence, I think we've got to do something to support all the foreign students living here in New York. And so they decide to start inviting a few students over for supper to their home on Sundays. Just a few students. That's how it started. And it's nothing fancy, it's just sandwiches and lemonade. And remember when I said that Florence is just as much a part of the story as Harry? Well, who do you think made those sandwiches and that lemonade and sent invitations out to the students and tidied up the home for the party? Yes, Harry got all the credit, but I've got a strong feeling that Florence did more than her share of the work. So it's nothing fancy, it's just a home, but it's companionship and welcome. It's never a small thing when you open your heart with sincerity and kindness, or your home, no matter how humble, in the spirit of hospitality. Well, a little time passes, and the Sunday suppers at the Edmonds home are a big hit, and students from all over the world are now regularly coming to dinner. When I picture these gatherings, I imagine laughter. Maybe there were card games. There was dancing in the parlor, piano duets, poetry readings. Relationships are being formed. Friendships are springing up. Sunday suppers are not only making New York City a little warmer and kinder for students from faraway places, but they're creating a whole new complex network of relationships, new threads in the interconnected web of life. A community made up of people who were once complete strangers. Have you ever noticed how very often when you take a course of action and you commit to it, that the universe sort of helps you along, even if you don't quite know what you're doing yet? Well, that's what happened to Harry and Florence. They reached out, they did what they could, they made a sincere gesture of hospitality. They didn't say, we're going to fix this giant problem of foreign students in New York City being alone and without social connections. No. But they also didn't say, well, this problem is too big and we don't know how to solve it, so there's nothing we can do. No, they just did what they could. And it was really on a fairly small scale, but it really mattered, and it made a difference to a lot of students. Well, the story gets a little fuzzy after that, but eventually Sunday suppers outgrew the Edmonds home, and there were so many attendees they had to start renting out places to hold them all. And eventually, Harry began to think on a much bigger scale. He saw that this thing had the potential to grow beyond a mere supper club for visiting scholars. He began to envision a residence for international graduate students, a place where they could live and study and work in a global community focused on fostering bonds of friendship and understanding. As their dream grew, Harry and Florence somehow began to meet people who could help make it a reality. People named Rockefeller and Dodge. The Edmonds enthusiasm was so infectious, they were able to get the philanthropists of their day excited about the idea of building a permanent home for international students in the heart of the city. And so, in 1924, International House opened in Manhattan. It provides housing for over 700 graduate students from over 100 different countries. And it has done so for almost a century now. It even welcomes some Americans, and I was lucky enough to be one of them. But it's far more than a roof over your head. Living in this global community at iHouse is a life-changing experience that has impacted the lives of over 65,000 alumni. These alumni include heads of state, Nobel Prize-winning authors and scientists, world-renowned artists, musicians, and entrepreneurs. People like Chinua Achebe, Allen Ginsberg, Leonard Cohen, Leontine Price, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer. At its grand opening in 1924, these words, written by Florence Edmonds, were read aloud. I am International House. I open my doors to the students of the world, that they may live together and grow in understanding. I am builded as a canopy for an adventure that had its beginning in a friendly greeting to a lonely student, which has widened into a world brotherhood. Therefore, I am not just a beginning, but a fulfillment. Listen to the 3 explicit core values of iHouse. Can you hear echoes of that initial encounter on the street in the values that this organization promotes and upholds? Respect, treating others with dignity, regardless of differences. Empathy, the ability to relate to the perspectives of others. And moral courage, standing up for what's right, even in the face of adversity. And 3 or 4 times a year, Sunday suppers are still held at iHouse in a tradition that commemorates the humble beginnings of this wonderful global community. And there's even more. 17 other iHouses now stand in other great cities of the world. London, Chicago, Berkeley, Paris, Sydney, each with its own unique culture, but all taking their inspiration from that first one in New York. This was no small thing that emerged from the Sunday suppers at Harry and Florence Edmonds' house, right? And so, here we are in 2018. It's as troubled a time as our, and maybe you too. Some of us may feel hopeless. Some of us may feel lost. Some of us may want to help, but we have no idea what to do. Well, I believe that the divine is always speaking to us and through us, if only we're willing to listen. So, as we come out of hibernation this year and we begin to look around us, and hopefully the snow will melt someday, I invite you to consider in what small way you might be able to make the world a little bit kinder and a little bit more hospitable. Are you struggling? If so, are you like the student from China, willing to take the risk to reveal yourself to another person? Are you willing to ask for the support and the comfort you need when you're feeling lost and lonely? Will you welcome in the human conditions of sadness and suffering? Will you believe that you still deserve compassion and hospitality, even at your most difficult times? And consider what radical welcoming means to you. How are you willing to listen to the call to love, knowing that it might come at any time and in the most unexpected of places? How will you answer that call when it comes? And what might emerge from your response? Remember, you don't have to be powerful, famous, rich, or superhuman. Harry and Florence Edmonds were none of those things, but they were enough. You are enough. I am enough. And we are not alone in this work. People of good conscience are all around us, holding up the world with their love. The small things that we do to make a better world will add up to big things, as long as we do not become disheartened and abandon the field. And we can be alert to the call of the divine in the face and the voice of another person. A person we live with, a person we work with, or a person we pass on the street. It may be someone we love deeply, or someone we struggle even to like. It may be someone we know well, or someone we will never know for more than a few seconds. We can always make the choice to listen attentively with open hearts, and when we receive the call to love, we can respond. Stay open to others around you. Keep envisioning the beloved community. Hold it in your heart. Keep on planting seeds. Keep on sharing knowledge. And keep on smiling at strangers. You never know what big things may emerge from one single, simple act of kindness.
Somebody's hand made this world
comfortable and join us as we extinguish our flame. We extinguish this flame,
but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I had to do my jumping jacks.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.